So what I have here are a box of microscope slides. Microscope slides are 1 inch wide and 3 inches long. And hopefully you can see a little better what this one looks like. This one has some fingerprints on it, unfortunately. But you can see it's 1 inch by 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the microscope slide on the microscope stage. Now the way this works is that I use this little lever to move the flipper out of the way. I put the microscope slide down flat like that, the long direction going left to right, and then I push it into this back corner, like that. This is the side away from the flipper. Once the slide has been moved back into the one end away from the flipper, I then let the flipper close, and now the slide is trapped between the flipper arm and the rest of this mechanism here. And this slide is pretty difficult to move because the flipper is holding it in place. Now, if I wanted to focus something on that slide, I would use these knobs to move the slide side to side, forward and back, until I had what I wanted to look at underneath the objective I'm using. So let's say I want to use the low power objective. Well, then I would just move, in this case, this objective into place, and it would be looking straight down at the specimen. And normally when you start focusing on a slide for the first time, is you start with the scanning lens, and as you look through the ocular, you can use the coarse adjustment to move the slide up and down until you get the specimen in focus. Let's say we're about right there. And you make sure that the specimen is right in the middle of the field of view, and you go to the next objective, which in this case would be the high and dry. You then, when you move the high and dry objective, the low power objective, when you move the low power objective into place, you make sure that it doesn't hit the slide. And then you can use your adjustment knobs to bring the slide into focus. Now, in this particular model of microscope, the microscope is designed so that the low-powered objective, the one that you're looking at right now, this one here, the yellow stripe, make sure that that objective cannot hit the slide. So you can be pretty relaxed when you focus under the low-power objective. But you have to be very careful when you use the next objective, which is the high-powered objective. You want to make sure that that objective is not going to hit the slide. If you have the slide too far up, that objective will hit the slide and damage the objective. So you have to make sure that you have focused on the top surface of the slide, and then when you move the objective in, you have to look from the side to make sure that you're not going to hit the slide. Then you focus under that objective, which is the high and dry with the blue stripe. And then when you're ready to do an oil immersion examination, which is this lens over here, the biggest lens, you make sure you're focused under the high and dry. You move the high and dry out of the way, and then using a small bottle of oil, you will squeeze a drop of oil and let it drop from the bottle to the surface of the slide where you're looking. You then move the oil immersion lens into position. And if you have focused properly, you will not hit the slide and the lens will go into the oil. That's why it's called an oil immersion lens. You then will focus only using the fine adjustment, up and down a little bit, move from side to side, make sure things are moving, that you're focused properly. And then once you've focused, you have finished the focusing under oil immersion. And under oil immersion, 100x objective times a 10x ocular means you are looking at an image that is being magnified 1,000 times. When you're all done, of course, you remove the last slide you have looked at, dispose of the slide properly, usually in a special glass container, so that people who are cleaning up the labs at night don't get cut by grabbing a standard wastebasket bag. Anyway, once you've disposed of the slide properly, you turn the scope off, lights off. You put the scanning lens into position. That's the shortest lens. You move the stage up as far as it will go, and then you will unplug and wrap the cord around the scope and put the scope away. And I'm going to show you that in just a moment. Okay. So I'm going to unplug the scope, grab the scope. In this case, I'm sliding it across the counter without lifting it yet. I will take the cord, and on this particular scope, there's no other way to wrap the cord except to go around the base of the stage. I'm now going to take the scope, as I did before, and I'm going to grab the scope with my dominant hand on the back and my other hand, left hand, underneath the base. Make sure that the left hand is supporting the scope along with the right hand holding it. Walk it over to the cabinet. And I'm going to carefully lift it up and put it back in place, making sure that I can replace the cover before I close the cabinet. In this lab, the doors slide back and forth. I slide the door, and I have finished with the scope, and I have replaced it. Now, one thing I didn't demonstrate here, because I didn't actually use the scope, I just kind of went through the motions, is I didn't demonstrate that one of the things you always need to do when you're working with microscopes is you need to make sure that the lenses are always very clean. Now, when you clean lenses, you have to use special paper. You have to use special paper called lens paper. You cannot, I repeat, cannot use paper towels, Kleenex, Kim wipes, your handkerchief, a cloth. Those are all no-nos. In a lab, there should be plenty of lens paper available in little packets that are labeled, oddly enough, lens paper. And you simply tear off half of a sheet and you use that lens paper, which is made out of a different kind of fiber than regular paper. You'll use that special lens paper to gently rub and clean the ocular lenses and any of the objective lenses that you used that day. Sometimes you need to use a cleaning fluid that is also typically provided in the lab to help more effectively clean the lenses. But again, I can't emphasize enough that you must be certain that the paper you're using is only lens paper. You should always clean the lenses when you first take the scope out of the cabinet, and you should clean the lenses right before you put the scope back into the cabinet. Just want to repeat that I didn't do that this time. I was more concerned about showing you how to handle the scope, and I wanted to show you parts of the scope. If I were actually going to use the scope, which I didn't, I would have cleaned the lenses with lens paper, and then I would have used the scope, and then I would have gone back again and cleansed the lenses before I put the scope away. And that's it for the microscope.